Welcome to Superhouse, and we are upgraded, as you can see, into this new show.
2020, everybody. We made it.
If you haven't joined us before, I am Ben Wan. I am the man who knows too much about Batman, and I'm joined by...
I'm the guy that lives in the world of Indeed. Andrew, what's up, everybody?
I'm the man who knows too little. Wolfie.
About everything.
So we educate him on the stuff. So the day is finally here. We are here to talk about the Dark Knight Trilogy. We got to Batman Begins. It only took us like 6 months or so. Yeah. So
you waited. Here we are. Full video, podcast, whatever you want.
Bale is here.
We're
with his throaty voice.
We're definitely in our mom's basement right now.
Baby Bale bouncing on my knee.
Oh. So we thought we would do something a little different, considering the fact that if you're a Batman fan, you've seen this movie, and if not, then you're not a Batman fan. So what can we say that isn't what you already know? We can review it, which you've already have your own opinions on, or we can do something new. So this is our deep dive into the comic books versus the movie. It's comics versus Nolan on here. That's why I am in my jersey for Wayne Enterprises, and we are going to have Wolfie here be the scorekeeper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to detail what happens in the movie versus the comics that it's based on, and we're going to kind of vote on what we prefer. Obviously, there's 3 of us, so 2 out of 3 opinions win for that score on that.
Yeah.
All right. A lot of what I have here is drawing off of a Batman Online article that I contributed to many years ago, so there will be some of that in there as well as some of my own stuff. So let's get started. What comic books are we going to be drawing off of? The first thing we need to know is that the person we need to acknowledge for all of this, for all the comic book stuff that made it into the Dark Knight Trilogy, is David Goyer. He said, quote, "Chris Nolan had never read comic books. He never knew the world. So he trusted me on the franchise and with Superman to know what was canon, what could be changed, and what couldn't be changed. Early in Batman Begins, he said, does he have to have a utility belt?" And I said,
that wouldn't have been
yes.
Great. So Goyer actually saved some parts of this.
Yes.
Here we go.
He said, why? And he showed me the design. It was all black, and I said, it has to be yellow. And he said, oh. So Goyer knew. Yes. Okay. This is how I do it. Great. So what were the comics that he contributed to? If you've seen the movie and know the comics pretty well, you probably already know, but it was Year One, the Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale collaboration, so that's Long Halloween, Dark Victory, and the several issues that made up Haunted Night, and the Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams 1970s work of the Razz al Ghul saga, of course, since he's the main villain. And
Raysh Ghul for some fans.
Yes, we'll go into that in a bit. Is it Raysh or Razz? We'll find out.
Ralph or Rafe?
It's Ralph.
Ralph Fiennes.
Ralph Al Ghul.
Oh, man.
And finally, Denny O'Neil is The Man Who Falls, which is from Secret Origins of the World's Greatest Superheroes from 1989. That was kind of his way to combine all the different origins. But if you have been listening to us, you have just heard, or hopefully have heard, the training episode that we went into. So I already went in depth in that, but we will do some recaps and some crossovers on that.
Get with it, kids.
Seriously, come on. So next,
Zillennials.
we will go...
Z-grade millennials.
The Superhouse copywritten phrase.
Okay.
You heard it here. All right, so let's start. So our first contestant, the opening scene. So Bruce Wayne falls through the well, lands in the Batcave for the first time when he's about 6 years old or so.
I'm having fun already, Ben.
Yes. Okay.
Great setup.
This
already.
is the second time that
Love
we've seen Batman fall through the cave. The first time was Batman Forever. We would end up seeing this in Batman vs. Superman, but this is the only time in live action that they put it in the right chronology. It's supposed to happen before his parents get killed, as opposed to the other movies where it happens afterwards.
Okay.
Yes. So it falls right out of The Dark Knight Returns, as well as a bit of The Man Who Falls, because The Dark Knight Returns only shows him falling into it. The Man Who Falls actually shows Thomas Wayne rescuing him, which comes with a first big difference. Because, as you guys remember, in the movie, Thomas Wayne, he comes down and he's like, it's okay, don't be afraid. He rescues Bruce, and he's like, why do we fall, Bruce? So we can learn to pick ourselves up. In The Man Who Falls, Thomas Wayne says, "Idiot! I told you never to go off alone, didn't I?"
Goyer saved that one once a game.
You're so stupid.
Once a game.
So this is kind of along the lines of the Brett Cullen Thomas Wayne in Joker than what we got in the movie. But That is the first big difference. Thomas Wayne
You idiot! Wow,
as a jerk
change. What a
versus
change.
Thomas Wayne being a nice guy who you would be sympathetic towards when he gets killed. So
I became a night owl and started wearing black leather because Daddy didn't love me.
This is a different
it's a
story.
whole other different thing.
Grant
So-
Morrison take once again.
I will start. My vote is for Nolan and Goyer on this.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That one goes.
That one goes to movie.
Tally.
All right, movie 1, comic 0.
I'm gonna use capital I's
Okay.
for my tally.
The Roman numerals.
was better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever.
All right. Next is the differences in the origin that we have seen countless times over and over again. So in the comics, Thomas and Martha Wayne bring Bruce to see The Mark of Zorro, and it's a happy time. He loves the movie. He goes out. They, for whatever reason, they leave the theater and go into Crime Alley by themselves and get killed by a mugger. In the movie, it plays out a lot differently. This is not some happy-go-lucky night. They take him to Mephistopheles by Boito. It's the opera, and he feels the flashbacks to the traumatized memories of falling into that cave because of the bats that he sees. And because he's afraid, he asks his dad, "Can we go?" And so they leave early through the side entrance into Crime Alley, and that's where they run into Joe Chill and get killed.
Okay.
I like how on the other side of that opera house there's Candy Alley, and behind it there's Paradise Market.
But then there's Crime Alley,
like-
so if you leave through the wrong side exit, then
Did they ever go over why it's called Crime Alley?
That
Is there
goes
like an
into-
origin
well,
for the name
apparently
anywhere?
it was just called Park Row, and then it became Crime Alley after the Waynes were killed. So it was named because it was. But like, yeah,
Kinda
it's not like
Skid Row.
it's not like Thomas Wayne was like, "Let's go to Crime
Let
Alley
me take
tonight."
my only son down Crime Alley in the nighttime.
It's a shortcut, don't worry.
We're
So-
rich as hell, and everyone knows the way we
It's
look.
the shortest and most convenient alleyway in the city.
Yes.
Weird name though.
So they try to.
Weird name. Let's go down Murder Street.
So it's never really called Crime Alley, I think, in the Nolan trilogy. It's just a random side street that they walk
Yeah,
out
they
of
don't say the name out,
in the opera. And this sort of causes Bruce to feel guilty about the deaths of his parents, feel that he killed them. Sometimes the comics try to play around with that, with the fact that he's the one who wanted to see Zorro or something like that, or he wanted to go to ice cream afterwards, so they took him down the alley. There's usually some sort of justification for the
Dad's
guilt.
like, you idiot.
You
We're going
idiot,
to
we're
opera.
not getting
You
to the ice-
idiot.
You and your gay blade.
But what's funny is Nolan wanted to avoid having him go to Zorro because he didn't want the idea of a masked crime fighter to exist in this world yet.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
makes sense.
So he thought the opera would make more sense, and plus Mephistopheles is apparently about the Faust story, the idea of the guy who makes a deal with the devil, which kind of, if you stretch it a little bit, might thematically tie into him making the deal with Razz to train him later on.
I enjoy
So
this
there's
change,
There's
Nolan.
a
Very
good
good.
change. So my vote's for the movie again. What about you guys?
Movie.
Yeah, movie.
All right, so Nolan is winning so far. All right, next one
He
is
always does.
is Joe
In
Chill.
my heart.
As well.
Joe Chill.
We'll keep going. We'll see.
Murder
Next is Joe
driveway.
Chill. So in the comics at the time of Batman Begins, the killer was sort of unknown. In Jeff Loeb, he didn't write this in The Long Halloween, but he wrote this in the Superman Batman one where he said, I cloak myself. Quote, I cloak myself in the very shadows the gunman used to hide his face from me. And that sort of ties into the fact that later on he will use the shadows to become Batman, and this is sort of the hidden figure that he never saw and was never able to catch. But as I also said in the training episode with Andrew, I just don't get the idea of Batman never trying to find out who his parents' killer was at all
Right,
when he
right.
grew up, so I don't really like the post-crisis version.
That's the whole impetus for him to be a detective, I think,
Yes.
in the beginning.
Yes.
Like, that's how I would write it for sure.
But in general, Joe Chill is seen as this intimidating figure, the demon that haunts his nightmares, who took his parents and stripped him away from him. But in the movie, Joe Chill was very human. Actually, he follows the version that's in The Dark Knight Returns, and it's the only version outside of the Nolan version that this is portrayed, where he said, quote, he flinched when he pulled the trigger. He was sick and guilty over what he did. All he wanted was money. So this is more of a desperate man who doesn't want to do this, but does it anyway because of how much he needs the money.
Mm-hmm.
So the significance of this change is that we go from this sort of, in the comics, it's this sort of random act of cruelty, this cruel man who haunts his every nightmares, versus a man who is very much seen as a human being in this. So personally, my vote is for the comics on this one. But let's see what you guys think.
What were the differences again?
The difference being Joe Chill being this cruel figure who takes his parents away from him versus this nervous guy. Because if you see Richard Brake's performance as Joe Chill in the scene, he's shaking. The gun's shaking when he's got him. He almost doesn't want to do it.
That's true.
And later on, he expresses guilt over it. This is very much, sure, he is responsible for the trauma, but he's portrayed almost not quite sympathetically, but close to it. I would say.
Yeah.
I think they were trying to add a little layer of depth to this character, but I also feel like the act of cruelty, the idea of this man haunting Bruce's dreams and being the cruel man from the shadows, that's what causes him to be Batman. So I sort of prefer that take instead.
They both seem to make a lot of sense.
I'm on the fence on this one, honestly.
They both, as motivations, like they both have a lot of weight. I think for a film, the Joe Chill being like a little bit more sympathetic is a little bit more interesting to watch.
Right.
But I do love like the nightmarish, hidden figure, shadowy figure that lurks in the back of Bruce's mind.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, I think I'll go with the comics on this one because it's just.
All right.
Because it's the face of crime for
the face
Bruce.
of crime. That's like what he fights every night that he goes out.
Yeah.
And the first time we see Gordon is when he comforts Bruce at the police station. Now, this had never happened in the comics before Batman Begins. If you've been following our podcast for a while, you know that happened in various treatments and unmade scripts. It was in the Steve Englehart Batman treatment. It was in the Sam Hamm draft that didn't make it into the Batman 89 movie. It was in the Bruce Wayne pilot as well. And this is the first time we actually get to see it in live action. Now, this is a little different from the comics. In the comics, the person to comfort him after the death of his parents was established in the 1970s with Dr. Leslie Tompkins. In the story, There's No Hope in Crime Alley, she was this maternal figure who hugged him and everything, and he always felt indebted to her and would always get pissed off if anybody was giving her crap later on and beat the shit out of them. Gordon... Yes, Leslie Tompkins, old lady at 80 years old, kills people. No, it'd be Batman.
Oh, okay. Batman.
But the take on Gordon was slightly based on Year One, who is a Chicago cop who comes to Gotham around the time that Batman or Bruce Wayne comes to Gotham to become Batman. So he didn't have that type of connection to Gordon in that this was sort of established in Begins and then adopted later on into the comics, where they just said, you know what, he wasn't a Chicago cop. Now he's been in Gotham this whole time.
Chicago.
Yeah. So
Bears.
between the two, let's
say
vote.
Chicago without that bullshit. All right, keep going. Sorry.
I'd say between the two, this establishes a tighter connection between Bruce and Gordon. Yes, I would have loved to see Leslie Tompkins as a Batman purist, but I don't know what type of role she would have gotten in the story as opposed to Gordon. He's a huge part of Batman's story. He's in the same panel that introduced Bruce Wayne in 1939. So I have to give this one to the movie. Gives a tighter connection to Bruce and Gordon, makes it pretty much makes sense, really, for him to turn to Gordon later on for help.
I agree, Ben.
It's a movie. I also agree.
Yes,
it's like a very. It seems for Nolan's use of it as well as like a very like linchpin kind of moment for him. The humanity of it all.
Yeah, I would say so.
That one to the
all right, movie again. Next one.
Nolan and Goyer.
Nolan and Goyer.
Comics
Terrio? No. Was it the first Batman Begins just Goyer?
It was Goyer and Chris Nolan. Goyer wrote the first draft, and I'll occasionally go into any differences that were in Goyer's draft that didn't make it into the movie, including some training
Shakespeare's
stuff.
Head?
Shakespeare's Head was not in it, unfortunately. I wish it was. That'd be cool. Let's see.
In the background. Anyway.
In all versions of the story, as established in the first time Bill Finger wrote the origin.
For you kids.
The police never found the Wayne's killer. And it was because they couldn't find it, the failure of the justice system, the failure of the rules, that Bruce decided to take that vow when he was a kid on the graves of his parents to avenge them by warring on all criminals for the rest of his life. And that's what started him on this path to start training through his teens and college years. If you listen to our training episode, which you should, he started at like 10 or so in my version. So this is very different from Batman Begins, where right after Gordon comforts Bruce, Loeb comes in and says, "Good news, son. We caught him. So this entire story is now different because Joe Chill gets caught the same night that he kills Thomas and Martha Wayne. Bruce, in this version, has no reason to sort of doubt the police department. They did their job. And he doesn't start training until he's like 22 in this version. So, to me, there's a huge difference. I mean, didn't find the killer. It kind of establishes, it makes sense why he wouldn't want to become a policeman or why he would be mad about it. Yeah. As opposed to if he was caught, then that kind of takes away a little bit of that same feeling. So my vote for this one is the comics.
I keep agreeing with you, but yeah, I mean that's why we're on a podcast together, everybody.
It would be like
I agree.
Such good motivation to see that in the film, to see like a more inept or disorganized police force being the frustrating factor to like move forward on being a vigilante, because it seems like
now they established they established later on why he would become a vigilante, but
it just ties so well into the detective aspect, you
and
know?
Then again having that seed planted in the back of your mind,
exactly,
like nobody fucking knows who it is, you know?
It's like, nobody knows.
It's crime itself.
Crime I think as I said in the training episode, I think the best version was when they had Bruce figure it out when he was in his teens, and then confront Joe Chill, and then realize he has to move beyond vengeance, and then continues his training. That way, he
still wants to be Batman, even after that point. Yeah.
So you get the best of both worlds.
And that's like this was happening anyway, even without the death of his parents. He's going to be fucking Batman on the streets, punching criminals.
I like that bit. I don't know if you could put it into a movie, but like him being like a teenager having this like accelerated or like an exceptional mind for detective work when he's a little bit younger or something.
Yeah,
like that.
There's a little bit of that in Gotham,
would be
but
cool.
though not enough of it, in my opinion. All right, so I went to the comics again.
Yeah.
So it's not as easy of a competition as we thought. So let's go on. I'm going more in the chronological order of the timeline than what's in the movie, because the movie jumps back and forth with time, and that would be confusing for this. So we jump to when Bruce and Rachel are in their 20s, and so this is where I sort of bring up the casting that originally happened, because this was the first reboot of Batman. They were going for a younger Batman. They wanted to court as many young actors as possible. So we kind of already know a lot of the guys who auditioned, because some of their audition footage made it on YouTube. Cillian Murphy auditioned for Bruce Wayne and ended up getting the role of Scarecrow.
Let's be honest, that was not happening.
Yeah, seriously.
He's not going to be Batman. Sorry, man. You made it a lot better than I have in Hollywood. Like, you're fucking really good, but you're not going to be
Batman. Yeah.
Good audition, though, probably.
It was interesting to see. He looked good in the cowl. It's just as Bruce Wayne.
Oh, they have him in costume?
Yeah, he's in the Batman Forever suit. That's they used the Batman Forever suit.
Suit stinks. No, I'm just kidding.
Next is I might be mispronouncing his name. Eon Bailey. He was in Fight Club and the TV show Once Upon a Time. You see some of his audition on YouTube as well. And then, of course, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Oh, yeah.
Had audition for the.
Jeez, he's been trying forever.
So there's footage of Jake Gyllenhaal in a bat cowl?
There is, but we don't have access to it. The only ones that got released were Christian Bale's audition, as well as a little bit of Cillian Murphy's and Eon Bailey's. But unfortunately, they didn't release Jake Gyllenhaal's, because I really wanted to see that.
It would be too good for the universe.
Cool. Yes.
Yeah. But then thinking of even the Rogues Gallery, too, like Jake Gyllenhaal's like well-equipped to play many of these characters.
Man.
Batman
it's a crime against humanity.
Also, who was up for it is Joshua Jackson from The Mighty Ducks, as well as Fringe. He said, quote,
He's still around?
Yeah, he said, I went and did the screen test. I was one of the last 4 or 5 guys up for the role of Batman. But, I don't like to lose any job, but they cast the right guy. Yeah. So
Bale had that intensity.
Bale pretty much had it in the can, but other guys that were courted for it but didn't make it to the audition room because they turned it down. Orlando Bloom, he said, quote,
nope.
I did meet with Christopher Nolan, but I didn't audition.
That's a big nope on that one.
It was more of a conversation of I was in the middle of all this other stuff, and I was like,
he got an apple head.
Yes.
That's Legolas, man.
I don't want to see him
Batman.
apple-headed Batman. No, I'm just kidding.
Let me ask you a question. Does Batman shoot a bow and arrow? The answer is no.
Should Orlando Bloom have been Oliver Queen then?
Yeah. That would be so weird if
he'd also be typecast
as an archer.
Also, next is Josh Hartnett. He said, quote, I think my regret...
Can see it, actually.
Me too. He said, quote, I think my regret mostly was not forming the friendship or the creative partnership with that director more than it was not doing Batman. So he doesn't really...
Who was number 2 after Bale? Like, if Bale said no, who was getting this role?
Gyllenhaal
was, okay.
Goyer said that Gyllenhaal was his choice until he saw Bale.
Interesting. Yeah.
Fuck, man.
Yeah.
I could see. He
I
just
could see
has
that.
the oddness to it.
Yeah, the intensity.
Yeah.
Too.
Intensity.
The
They both are very
intensity.
intense, but
Yeah.
Bale's just so well, I guess,
Well, yeah.
well trained.
Yeah, he was a kid actor.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, he's got the chops like crazy.
And lastly, another guy who was met for it was Heath Ledger.
For Bruce?
Yeah, he said,
Oh, I
quote,
remember hearing about this.
Nolan
yeah.
said he was quite gracious about it, but he said, quote, I would never take part in a superhero film.
Ledger said that?
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay.
And then
So,
Batman Begins was like, good. He's like, oh, shit.
And Ledger was like, never mind, what do you got for me? And apparently he accepted the role of Joker before the script was even written on this.
So he was initially against superhero movies, but then accepted the
role.
role.
He was against superhero movies. He didn't want to be part of it. He saw Batman Begins, was impressed.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Then Nolan courted him for Joker, and he said, I'm in, without seeing any script because nothing was written.
Right.
Okay, I got you.
And Begins really turned the tide.
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
for
2005,
the generation,
man.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like how a lot of guys
6,
turned down the Batman role in '89 because they're just like, Adam West, I'm above that shit.
Yeah,
Same thing here because
yeah.
they just seen the George Clooney stuff and they thought there's another Joel Schumacher type of
Right,
thing, another
right.
'90s blockbuster toy commercial.
I have a question about this. Is slightly tangential, but
Yeah.
whose idea was it in the script writing process to add all of the mythological aspects to it, like theatrics and deception, and
I think that was in the
and,
original
like
Goyer.
explaining
Yeah.
every little step. Why bats? Why deception? Why this? Why that?
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like that's a collaboration between both Nolan and Goyer.
Okay.
I feel like Goyer was sort of setting that up to answer Nolan's questions.
oh,
here.
that's cool.
So I think it was a collaboration.
that.
It is in the original Goyer draft, but I feel like that wasn't just Goyer alone. I think he was doing that because that's what Chris wanted.
Sam Raimi started it in Spider-Man. We had all those African masks behind Osborn. And that stuck in Goyer's head.
Or
And
you
to
could
be,
say
to be a symbol that can't die
You could
too,
say
like
the
all that
89
kind of
movie.
stuff.
Oh, that's true.
Whenever he's talking about like being a symbol when
Yes.
you can't die, like that
Yeah.
stuff, I really, especially at that time in my early 20s, I resonated like fuck with that stuff. You know,
Exactly.
Like, that was my
Totally.
shit, man.
I think, I think they went the right direction doing that because all that stuff to people who hadn't read the comics wasn't really explained. And even if you did read the comics, you were reading stuff like Year One, Long Halloween. You weren't reading the training comics. Like I had to track down all that shit for the training episode with you. It wasn't. There's no
Pretty much-
collection.
It's pretty much skimmed over. a
Yeah,
lot of the
there's
time.
like there's no collection of all the like training comics. Like there is nothing. I would
Wow.
totally reprint it if I was at DC
Really?
Comics. Please listen to me. I would totally reprint it, but they don't. So I had to hunt down every single instance of
Wow.
it for it.
That's interesting.
That's awesome. Thank you, Ben, for your service.
Thank you. Also, Rachel Dawes. So apparently, Katie Holmes was the original choice for Rachel, but in the audition room, they did not audition with Katie Holmes. They all of the gentlemen who auditioned for Batman, so Cillian Murphy, Ian Bailey, Jake Gyllenhaal, and Christian Bale, they had Rachel being played by Amy Adams.
What?
Future Lois Lane.
Wow. She's been trying to get in
She's
on this for a
amazing.
minute now, boy.
So no wonder she got to be Lois later on because she had that Nolan connection.
That's
but
so crazy.
yeah,
The Nolan connection.
and
baby.
apparently she said that it was Bale's performance that made her cry. I don't know what made her cry. It's not like he was
In
saying
the
sort of-
audition?
Yeah, in the audition. But I was like, I don't know if that's real, but
Amy Adams almost cried.
from Bale's performance.
He's like,
Wow.
swear to me!
She's like, please stop
yelling
me.
Where's the trigger?
I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
what
2 movies
part
away.
of that? Yeah, because I'm like, I get it.
I was just joking with you.
So
Thank you for reading with me.
that does move us into Rachel Dawes. So Rachel Dawes doesn't exist at all
Yeah.
in the comics. Closest person named Rachel who was a love interest was in a comic called Year Two. We talked about this in the Phantasm episode where she was the daughter of the Reaper and her name was Rachel
Max
Caspian.
Shrek.
Max Shrek? What?
Just talking about people that aren't from the
Rachel
comics.
Yes. She's like Max Shrek in the fact that she's a major character who wasn't part of
Maybe
it.
they
but-
just changed that name because Christian Bale couldn't say Caspian.
Caspian. Well, in the original script, her name is Rachel Dodson.
Dawson.
But
That's
you
not
still
as
couldn't
good.
do it, yeah.
To make fun of.
So it
That's
became
not
Rachel
as good.
Dawes.
That's a good change on that one.
Apparently, apparently Harvey Dent was considered to be a part of this. He is mentioned in the original draft when Rachel
bloated
says,
ass script
Yeah.
already.
well, instead of Rachel, I think. But
Oh.
here's the
Oh,
thing.
right.
If
That's
you
good
have
like
Harvey
that.
instead of Rachel, this is a sausage party.
It needs a love
You
story.
have Batman, Gordon, Ra's al Ghul, Scarecrow, Lucius. Like, there's no female character. Like,
think
there's barely
even
any.
The bard Bob Kane would have noticed that it needed a woman.
Where's my 10+?
I need a 10+ broad in this one.
I guess they couldn't. You could have had Dent in there and then have Talia as a love interest since you got Ra's al Ghul in there, but then you'd have to figure out how to do Talia in there without tipping off the Ra's al Ghul twist.
Right.
Because if Talia doesn't look like, if you think that you think a Japanese guy is Ra's al Ghul the whole time, but his daughter is Liam Neeson's.
A whole lot of trouble.
Yeah, so I get it. So
man.
I feel like this is kind of a draw for me, where it's like, okay, it's not Harvey Dent. I prefer it if it was to Harvey Dent. However, we can't have this movie without any female lead in it at all. So I'd say it's a draw for me.
Rachel.
What do you think, Wolfie?
Yeah.
He agrees.
I'm going with Rachel.
Rachel.
Rachel. It would be very different. I mean, you just kind of need that in any kind of like action adventure film or anything like that. You just kind of need.
It's not necessarily that she's a better character than what's in the comics. It's just like what's best for the movie.
Yeah.
I have to examine it like this.
Yeah. They ever bring Rachel back to the comics?
No, I don't think so.
Not a one time. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
And within the Dark Knight timeline of the films, it's kind of a nice character because she dies in the Dark Knight. You know, it's like a nice. Not that it's so nice, but it's
nice that she dies.
She's self-contained in that.
It's self-contained. He has this other bit of motivation behind, not only is it parents, but it's like the love of his life as well, and for the Nolan verse, it went over quite well.
And she kind of got combined with Gilda Dent, who is Harvey's wife.
Yeah.
It
would just be Bob Kane bimbos, like, in every shot. There's not enough women in this
10+ broad.
Well, if you know already, like, this is already short on women. Martha Wayne has, like, 2 lines and is not mentioned whatsoever. Again, it's all about Thomas.
It's a good change for
At
sure.
least in Batman vs Superman, Martha played some sort of role, but not quite the role that we had hoped. But
whose idea was it to add Rachel to this?
It could have been both of them. It could have been honestly
Yeah.
both of them. I think they realized we need somebody who serves the Harvey Dent role, but we also need a love interest. So let's combine it and save Harvey Dent for another time.
Right.
So I'd say it's draw, so it doesn't really affect the scoring at this point. Yeah. Next one is the death of Joe Chill. So they go to the courthouse. Joe Chill says, I wish I could take back what I did. Bruce doesn't care, wants to shoot him anyway, and before he does it, one of Falcone's people kills him. Lee Harvey Oswald style. So what happens in the comics? In the comics, Bruce confronts Joe Chill when he's Batman already. In the original story by Bill Finger, Batman discovers him later on and then takes off the mask and says, I am the son of the people you murdered.
He's like, I murdered a bunch of people.
I don't remember this stuff.
I don't know.
Could you be a little bit more specific there, kid?
Kept knocking my teeth out.
So Joe Chill.
I don't know who you are.
Chill goes to his friends who find out you created Batman, and then they kill him. As retaliation for
the destiny of Joe Chill.
So he's always gonna die.
Not looking good.
There's another version of this where in year 2 where Batman does the same confrontation with Chill and he's not really sure whether or not to kill him. He does put the gun to Chill's head, but then the Reaper comes by and kills Chill instead and sort of cheats Batman out of that. So no matter what, if you're Joe Chill, you're fucked. Like, you kill Batman's parents.
That's how Batman Begins should have ended right before Commissioner Gordon was like, "There's a guy he left a calling card or whatever." Like right before that, Batman should have been throwing a guy out of a window and then dusting his hands.
Joe Chill,
Oh, Commissioner
Gordon,
what's up?
What's going on?
No, I didn't just and then in his mind he's just like, that was the only one. I swear, just the only one. Nobody has to know about it.
I think, as I said in the training one, the New 52 split the difference the best by having the confrontation before he becomes Batman, but that was after Begins, so I'm not going to count it in this competition here because they didn't have anything to draw from it. So between what was in the comics versus the change of having it before he becomes Batman, I will vote for the movie because I think by taking Chill out of the equation earlier, there's no longer a factor of why didn't Bruce try to solve his parents' murder, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And because of the fact they already did the change of they caught him in the beginning, they had to do something with him later on in order for it to make sense for him to go from Bruce Wayne to Batman.
This is the first time it's ever been done in comics or otherwise, this order.
Yeah.
in the movie
to have him do
confront Joel before he's Batman.
Yeah.
Okay.
And with the
first
film
time.
again, like the strength of the Rachel Dawes character,
Add
actually, is you get
an
that-
arraignment too, right? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But you get that scene in the car and everything where that's a real turning point for Bruce.
Of course,
he was ultimately he was fine with being a murderer.
Of course,
right.
Yeah, plays into the character quite strong.
I do like the comics version, but I do see that it is strong. I mean, yeah, movies. The thing is, it works with the movie because of everything else with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's good. The movie's good. I'll go
And
with
the
the
sense
movie.
of realism,
Yeah.
I guess, like the relationship drama that arises.
Right.
That creates it, yeah.
All your other factors are set up well based on that. I don't know. It's just the harmony. I don't know how to say it. All the other factors work well with it. So yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure if you changed,
To Rachel Dawes.
you could change all the other factors
Yeah.
as well, and it could still work another way.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
But I would say just the
Yeah.
overall idea of Joe Chill getting taken out of the equation before he becomes Batman. That to me makes sense, no matter what
Okay.
the canvas is, just because of the fact that, like, again, why would he spend his time wanting to fight all crime? Why wouldn't he just go after just that one guy the whole time?
Right.
The one that got
That's
away.
true. That's true.
Why would you just ignore that? That's why I don't like the post-crisis version where they're just like, oh, like the killer was never found, so he's like this faceless killer, and whenever he fights crime, like he thinks that he's fighting any one of them could be the one who killed his parents. I'm like, that doesn't really make any sense. Why he wouldn't just fucking go after the guy himself?
He could be anybody in this
So
city.
I don't care for that version. A lot of people like it,
get you.
but I don't get it. So once again, we go to the movie. Next is
Goyer.
getting pushed to travel the world. So in the movie, Bruce Wayne is a college dropout pretty much. He says that, Alfred's like, hey, like, what about going back to Princeton? And he's like, well, I like it fine. They don't feel the same way. He never finishes his education, and he sort of needs to talk with Rachel after the death of Joe Chill to denounce guns. Then he has that talk with Falcone, who tells him, who basically the confrontation teaches him that he can't take this guy down as Bruce Wayne.
Right.
So then he goes off, exchanges jackets with a beggar, and then goes off and disappears from Gotham and kind of just learns to become a criminal at the same time. But by the time he winds up in the prison, Ra's al Ghul tells him, you've become truly lost.
Yeah.
This is very different from the comic book version because, as we covered before, Joe Chill is never caught by the cops at all. So Bruce makes that vow when he's a kid. I will avenge my parents, and I will war on all criminals, and I will train in all abilities to do that. So if you've heard our episode again on the training, he's been doing that ever since age 10.
Tantric.
He even goes as far as to go to different colleges to learn from different experts on criminology and psychology, and even disguise himself at certain times as different students so that nobody can really think that Bruce Wayne actually gave a shit about crime. So he's already thinking about double identities.
I want to see Bruce Wayne the college days.
Yeah, the college days and
intensely listening to the professor.
With a big ass bong right next to him, smoking a bunch of weed. He doesn't really have the focus just yet.
He's like, oh, no shit. Oh, fucking, that's why.
Oh, shit.
So
Bats
obviously,
are cool.
between the two, we got somebody who in the comics is very focused on, I want to take down crime. I'm going to do everything it takes. I'm going to seek after all this stuff, as opposed to the Bruce Wayne in the movie who doesn't really feel that until he's 22 or so. And even then, he kind of just goes and wanders around a lot. And it's clear in the movie he doesn't really have a path until Ra's al Ghul shows up. So between the two, for me, I definitely value the comic book version more because that's a more proactive character. It shows the obsession that comes into the strength of who this guy is going to become. Right. I get the idea of the fact that maybe it's not as realistic, but he's fucking Batman. So I vote for the comics.
He's a man who's dressed as a bat.
Can I get a one sentence versus one sentence explanation again real quick? Give me the log
Just
line.
listen to me
I'm sorry, man. I've been listening, but for some reason I'm losing the thread. I apologize.
Pretty good. Cab Sav we got.
I would say, okay, it's Bruce Wayne being proactive about his training.
Okay, yes.
Versus Bruce in the movie kind of falling into his training just by sheer circumstance.
Yeah, I like him being more proactive.
Yeah.
Yes, more proactive.
Yeah.
I'm looking for strong boys to join my club.
but no black men.
You seem strong, but
Remember Liam
Particular set
Neeson
of
is
skills.
doing
Yeah,
some
I don't-
weird shit in England or something?
I'm not so sure what it is you want to do with your life.
Yes.
Did he kind of like
Anakin.
he was kind of looking for that indirectly though?
Yeah, but
That's
it's not
why he's
clear what he
touring
was.
Asia?
He's going around, but like he just winds up in this prison, and he doesn't really have a plan to get out at that point. Like Ross
Why does he take a liking to him? Because he can just beat ass in prison or something? Like
It's not explained.
it's just not explained, right?
It's not really explained.
There's
I mean,
some
we'll go
level
over
of
that. Yeah.
observation happening in the behind the scenes. Some level of
Yeah, I
He
think
gets his ass
he
beat
knows.
in prison,
Well, he
right?
knows who he is, and he knows he's motivated
Bruce
to fight
Wayne,
criminals.
yeah.
This
can
is
read his
me
aura,
theorizing
bro.
it because he's never really explained
And
it.
with Raj
Yeah.
Raj Al Ghul's obsession with like Gotham City and bringing the city down, he would know. I think he even refers to him as like the Crown Prince of Gotham. or
Yeah,
something like
yeah. Falcone does.
So-
yeah.
Oh,
Okay, that's what it is,
interesting.
Yeah, Falcone calls
So
him
there's
that.
definitely some brainiac research going on from Raj Al
Yeah,
Ghul's point as well.
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna side with you again, Ben.
Comics. All
Yeah.
right. So that one goes to the
yeah.
comics.
I go with movie, but yeah.
You're doing movie on this one?
Really?
What was it again? No, I'm kidding. No, I'll go with you guys. I'll go with you guys. Those moments really do stand out to me at the prison and everything, and I like that he was at some point like a criminal as well. or
Right,
whatever.
yeah.
But I think the obsession factor and that driving his training would also be kind of cool. But
Right. Yeah.
again, there's a little bit the lostness of Bruce in the movie. It like adds to Nolan's kind of, I think, the humanity that he's kind of
Right. Yeah.
injecting into the character.
But there's a clear difference because I think I skipped over this, but the fact that like Razz is like, hey, take a flower, go up to this mountain, find this random blue flower, come to our monastery. It's like, okay, where are you at? What do you guys actually do? Because he never gets an explanation for
like,
that.
hit that shit.
He doesn't
Probably
have
just a
really, and then later
strange
on,
curiosity, and
Yeah.
he doesn't give a fuck because he's touring Asia. He's been in prison.
like he doesn't actually find out what the League of Shadows does until Ken Watanabe is like, you will help us like go after Gotham and crime, and he's just like, wait, that's what you guys do? And I'm like, you didn't know this?
That's why you made me a ninja.
By the way, Watanabe's speaking some weird non-Japanese
I think it's
thing.
I think it's actually a made up language.
It's made up, right?
I think it's
Yeah.
made up for the
Yeah.
movie. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, that's the
Sounds
big difference.
Japanese-ish, but yeah.
That's the big difference because in the comics there is a scene of Bruce for his training stuff going up the Himalayas and the mountains and everything, but he also says in the narration, I paid such and such amount of dollars to find the specific mountain to go up to and the combination of the keys in order to open the door to get into the monastery. And then he does it and he gets to the monastery and he waits, and Master Kurigi, who's the one who is sort of the basis for some of these guys in the movie, comes out and he makes Bruce like wait for like a week before any sort of training, and then he's like,
really
"You will
gotta
sleep. You sweep the floor." So that was in the Man Who Falls. But let's see. Just to backtrack a bit, we won't be doing competition on this one because it's a little too superficial. But Falcone is a little different in the comics. In the comics, he's different physically. He's got a mustache. In Long Halloween, he kind of looks like Vito Corleone because they model so much The Godfather in the Long Halloween.
Right.
Also, he kind of has a more dignified way of speaking as opposed
That's
to
true, right, yeah.
Tom Wilkins' version, who's
That's the
kind
guy
of just the
saying the nut house, running the nut house.
just running the nut house.
Yeah, yeah.
As opposed to Falcone, who, when he gets attacked, he's like, in my home where my children sleep.
Right, yeah.
It's like it's a very different way of speaking.
He's a sophisticato.
Yeah, so I was kind of expecting more of that after reading. Long
Maroney's more
Halloween.
memorable to me in Begins than Falcone, actually, just because of that. From one professional to another.
Yeah.
This
So I
fall won't
thought-
kill me.
Yeah, I thought Roberts was great.
What makes
in the
you
role,
think
yeah.
I want to hear you talk?
Yeah,
Eric,
he's way more memorable as a gangster, bro.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Tom Wilkinson was nice and
He was
good.
nice. It was
Obviously,
he didn't
very
have the
good.
look. I
Yeah,
guess,
I mean,
to
I'm
send it
so
all the
used
way
to him
Yeah,
being
yeah,
just this.
yeah.
His affect was great.
Yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
used to him being this like random British guy in a lot of different
Right,
movies.
yeah.
Whereas Roberts, like, he embodies a mobster because he's
It's like
just
Clark Gable in the comics or something.
yeah, like he's Maroney in Dark Knight is like it's Eric Roberts who he's already American. He already has this persona of this like he can play the sleeves bag like no
Right.
problem in his sleep.
Right.
Let's see. Other than that, he also
Him and his
has
sister. No, I'm just kidding. Just joking.
he also doesn't have the scars on his cheeks. Catwoman gives him 3
Right.
scars from year 1, but obviously we wouldn't meet Catwoman until Dark Knight Rises, so that didn't make any sense to bring in. Also, there was originally going to be a fight between Bruce and Falcone's thugs before they kick him out, which kind of maybe have shown that Bruce had some fight training.
Okay.
beforehand, but they cut it from the script, and I don't think that they.
Oh,
It would
really?
have been almost.
So we're supposed
It
to.
wouldn't have made any sense.
We're supposed to go in whenever he's in the prison fight and all that, where he's supposed to basically have no fighting.
He might have fought along the journey, like
Scrapping.
there is
scrapping-
street
yeah.
scraps.
Young Asian
a little
boys.
bit, yeah. There's some coverage of it in the novelization, actually.
Really?
It wasn't as different as the Peter David novelization for Batman Forever, but it does have a few scenes that Dennis O'Neil, creator of Ra's al Ghul, actually wrote this novelization.
Peter David was beyond touch up.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, it's a whole other level. Yeah.
In the Denny O'Neil version of the novelization, he has stuff where Bruce is just randomly on the schooner, and the sailor dude like beats him up all the time, and he learns how to fight from that.
From a sailor dude?
Yeah, from some sailor dude. Because
pirate?
You can't have him meet another
Instead of a ninja?
I think. Well, he already meets Ra's al Ghul later on.
Okay.
So I think
he learns
Denny
from
O'Neil.
both pirates and ninjas.
Yeah, exactly.
You must be a well-rounded warrior.
Very well-rounded. Yes.
Balance.
Mind your footing.
Let's see. There's other training scenes
And your peg leg.
Yes.
Sorry. All right. Here we go.
There's other training scenes in the script that didn't make it either, with other mentors, not just Ra's al Ghul. So it's shown he's taught by an old man how to pickpocket, and then goes back to return the wallet, and the man thanks him and pays him the money from the wallet anyway. And then later on, there's a scene of him cracking a safe and hanging out with a bunch of Chinese gangsters. So again, more of like him learning how to be criminal, more than him learning about stuff that you would think he'd use as Batman. But that's in the script.
It's a good idea, though.
Yeah.
I mean, learn how the criminal mind works.
Yes, by being one himself. As opposed in the comics, where he sort of learns a lot of criminology stuff, and maybe some of his mentors are a little bit on the criminal sleazy side.
Okay.
Based off of what the mentors I told you about last time. Speaking of which, that gets us into the next difference, which is the fact that Ra's
When
al
you said
Ghul-
sleazy, I thought of Bob Kane again.
Bob Kane trained Batman.
This movie's horseshit. Where's all the titties?
He teaches him how to talk to women.
I sent him my script 3 weeks ago. Still haven't heard back. We need that Faye Dunaway.
So the next big difference.
Oh, man.
Next big
We had
difference-
this one professor in college, by the way. This old dude. He's probably not even alive anymore. But he talked about Uma Thurman because Kill Bill came out when we were in college because we're old as fuck now. And he was like, you see that Uma Thurman? Big tits. This is in the middle of our class.
Big tits.
It was only dudes
Thanks
in the
for the
class.
money.
Yeah. Big knockers.
Thanks for your tuition, suckers.
Yeah, that was where our fucking money was going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ra's al Ghul. That's our next.
All right.
Obviously, big difference in the comics is that in this movie, Ra's al Ghul trains Batman under the guise of Henri Ducard, but he still trains Batman.
This was new to this.
This was new.
the
He had
mythos.
never trained, had anything to
And
do.
Ducard was a
with
character
Batman.
in the Batman myth.
Yeah,
previously,
exactly.
right?
Which is what I'm gonna.
So
get
Batman
into.
being
So,
trained by the League of Assassins is like a wholly new concept.
That's a whole new concept that was added to this one.
I love it. I
he
love
had
it, though,
No
honestly.
part of League of Assassins at all. Nolan claimed that Batman's training was a story that was never told, but that's not quite true. And he had even looked at The Man Who Falls that contained some of this, so I don't know why he kept saying that shit, but whatever.
Don't read those comic books.
But you could say that Ra's was combined with several other different characters. I'll just recap a little bit of what I said in the training episode, but Master Karigi in the comics is the one who's in the monastery in the mountains that Bruce has to do that whole trek up to, and Karigi
Teaches him the Kyodai Ken.
Yes. He no, that's Sayoro.
I swear to God, it was this. I tried to find the diagram online. Fingers like this.
Yeah.
Straighten a line, curve up, and then down, and then to the heart. Woof, like that. Woof. Here. Tried it on my brother, did not
Didn't
die.
work.
He's dead.
He did.
What if it did work?
He's just slowly dying.
This is my confession. This is
hands
my
are
long
registered as
game.
Lethal weapons.
It's been on YouTube.
Whoosh.
I'll go to prison if I take my keys out too quickly.
So Karigi also was revealed to have trained a number of League of Assassin members, and then they adopted this into Arkham Origins Initiation, which is a DLC for Arkham Origins, where you have to survive through the fight training and everything. So
And learn the Kyodai Ken.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm just kidding. No, I
different sensei.
I played that. I forgot all about that.
So Kurigi also is a bald Asian man with facial hair, so that kind of informs how Ken Watanabe looks like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Let's see. Bruce was also established to have been trained by David Kane, who also is a member of the League of Assassins, and he underwent training from Lady Shiva, not before he became Batman, but after he became Batman in the Nightfall series when, after recovering from a broken back, he needed to get back into shape and asked Lady Shiva to help him out. And at one point, Lady Shiva told him, hey, you have to kill this man in order to graduate.
And she's like,
yeah. And Bruce refused, and that sort of is paralleled into the movie. And then, of course, there's Ducard himself. So Ducard is the alias that Ra's al Ghul takes on in this movie.
Right.
But in the comics, he is a French detective / mercenary who teaches him how to be.
The name checks out, though.
Yeah, the name checks out, but other than that, it's
a cool consolidation.
There's different,
of those characters, I suppose.
Yeah, and then of course, as I covered in our Shadow episode, in later on, years after Begins, in the Batman Shadow crossover, it was revealed that Ducard was actually the Shadow. So if you're Ducard, you're either actually Ducard, or you're Ra's al Ghul, or you're the Shadow. This guy never stays the same. But Ducard even helped Batman track down Ra's al Ghul in Legends of the Dark Knight number 144 when Ra's al Ghul teamed up with the Joker. So they're definitely separate characters in the comics. And at one point, the co-creator of Henri Ducard went to see Batman Begins, did not know that Ducard was going to be in it.
Where's my money?
Exactly. His name is Dennis Cohen, and he had told this to our friend of the podcast, Andrew Farago, of the Batman Definitive History of Batman and the Dark Knight and Comics TV and beyond. And he was amazed.
This book available right now on Barnes & Noble and Amazon and everywhere you find booksellers worldwide.
Exactly.
It's got pictures.
Exactly. Of great concept art, too.
It's a thick-ass book. It's this big.
Yeah.
It's
It's bigger than the Bible.
This little anecdote didn't make it.
Actually is.
Yeah, it is.
Actually is.
This anecdote didn't make it into that book, though. But according to Farago, he was told by Dennis Cohen, he was like, he was in the audience. He said, oh, my God, that's Ducard. That's the character that I helped create. I had no idea he'd be played by Liam Neeson.
Anakin.
And then, of course...
Liam Neeson's.
And then, of course, later on, he found out that was actually Ra's al Ghul, but he didn't really comment on that. He did, however, get to talk to Liam Neeson, and Neeson apparently was a fan of the Ducard character in the comics and said, quote, I love that character. When did you come up with him? How did you come up with that? And had a nice chat with this guy. So that's nice, at least.
He's like, this movie sucks, and he walked out.
There's a little bit also of...
Bastardized my creation.
Yeah, there's a little bit of also of a character named Thomas Woodley, who was an opponent that Bruce had during his training.
Thomas Woodley.
Yes, where
went
Woodley
to Harvard of Gotham.
and died.
Throw up your fisticuffs, young man.
Let us fight now.
How about thee?
Like gentlemen.
Sir Thomas Wood. No, he's an American redneck speaking type guy.
I got him totally wrong. Oh, man, I'm Thomas Woodley, y'all.
But Thomas Woodley kills one of Bruce's mentors in the comic book storyline Shaman in the mountains, and Bruce has a confrontation with him that ends with Woodley seemingly dying in the mountains, but then later on coming back and confronting Bruce in Wayne Manor, which is very similar again to what happens to Ducard / Ra's al Ghul. So this Ra's al Ghul thing is very much based off the comics, but consolidated into one character who happens to be a Rogues Gallery villain. So comics versus the film. Let me put it into a sentence for you guys.
Please, I need it. I already lost it.
Ra's al Ghul training Batman versus various people training Batman who aren't Ra's al Ghul.
Ooh, so tough.
Yeah.
What do you think, Wolfie?
As a filmic kind of guy, it's like I think it is a good consolidation of a lot of different tales that have come through with like, you know, peppering some of those either like Ken Watanabe's visual look or the name of Ducard. Definitely works better, but so I would go with the movie on that. But it's cool. I didn't actually know that there were all those other characters, so it's kind of maybe for elements in later Batman films or something like that. Hopefully we'll see those guys pop up.
The training film that Andrew and I are making.
Right. Yeah, cool. Your headcanon on the screen.
Everybody loves the training montage, and the movie just make the whole movie.
We have training montage.
That's what I've been saying for years. I've been saying that for years.
It should be fight, train, fight, fuck, train.
I'm talking China,
get that fade
fucking Tibet, Laos even. We're going all over, Korea, Japan, of course, all over the place, mainly Asia, probably some European shit too.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think that it works for the movie.
Yeah.
If it was episodic or like an anthology series of some sort, a long form, the other way probably works better. And also, if it was in a movie, it would be like it would have to be a montage because it would go,
it's so many guys.
This woman, whatever. This, it works a lot better, and also being tied into the League of Assassins, and also to me, I think it's cool because the League of Assassins are like the ultimate ninjas. You know what I mean? Even though they're not in Japan,
it makes a lot of sense.
Very cool though. And it makes a lot of sense, and to learn not just fighting, but also he does get like some deception shit in the movie as well from the League of Assassins.
At least he's
all part of
told
the
in the
curriculum.
dialogue. Yeah, it's part of the curriculum.
It's in the syllabus.
It's in the syllabus, right?
It's in the
curriculum.
Smoke bomb.
It's in the textbook that he.
Yeah.
Theatricality,
They look like
it's at least in
ninjas.
the
Whenever
dialogue,
they're doing the cuts on the sleeve or whatever he does that thing.
Yeah.
That whole deal. So I think that works really well for the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it for the comics, it works. For the movie, it makes sense. If you're going to spend a good 30 to 40 minutes with this character teaching him stuff, it's cleaner when it's one guy, and if that guy later on has a role in the plot. Because imagine if he was just regular Ducard, Liam Neeson shows up for like 30 minutes, trains him, and then you never see him again. It just doesn't quite gel in the same way, and it creates a different dynamic between Batman and Razz. So once again to the movie on that.
Boom.
How do they do it?
It would be cool to see a colorful cast of different, like, say, for instance, if it was like a TV show or something. To have, certain lessons be learned by these masters in their own right of all these different things. You know? It's just like a DLC kind of.
Yeah. Or a TV show.
My Batman Kung Fu The Legend Continues meets Gotham.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, you guys
listen to us, Warner Brothers.
DC Universe, HBO Max. This is the fucking idea right here, man.
Yep.
Copyright. We created Batman.
It's like Gotham Part 2, but it's more international.
Right. Well, I mean, the
martial arts driven.
The first scene of the Gotham finale is him showing up at some random place in Asia, being like, "I'll come back when I'm ready," and then
it's teed up.
You time jump, so we could totally get that kid back. He's already 18 years old. We can totally get him back to do this right now.
Yeah.
David Mazouz, come over.
Come on,
good. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, I thought so too. Awesome. I thought it was a great Bruce. All right, so next is the first meeting of Ra's al Ghul, because I thought we might as well cover this because not a lot of people do. Obviously, there's differences in some of the preliminary Ra's al Ghul shit that we got in here. So obviously, the first meeting was very different in the comics. In the movie, of course, finds him in a random monastery, not a monastery, a random prison in, I think, Bhutan or something, tells him to come up to be part of the mountains.
I'm the devil.
Yes. Doesn't tell him he's the devil, has the alias of Ducard. In the comics, this was around the 70s where Ra's al Ghul was created. Robin was already in college at this point, so that tells you how late in Batman's career Ra's al Ghul actually played a role.
Okay.
And Ra's al Ghul shows up in the Batcave and tells him, "Hey, your ward was kidnapped, so was my daughter. Also, I know that you're Batman.
You should really lock some doors around
you should also lock some doors around here." Yeah. But they actually, it's turns out to be a big ploy in order for Batman to prove himself worthy and for Ra's al Ghul to meet who his daughter is in love with, because there was a previous adventure where Batman met Talia.
Talia came along before?
Talia was introduced before Ra's al Ghul.
Somebody she just talked about, and then he finally showed up.
Yeah, well, I don't think Ra's was even mentioned. She was just a beautiful character who was she was captured as well as Batman by the head of the League of Assassins at the time, who was Ebenezer Dark. And then Ebenezer Dark died, and later on Talia was kidnapped, and Ra's al Ghul took back control of the League of Assassins. But at the time, Batman didn't know League of Assassins was even tied into Ra's al Ghul.
Okay.
She just said that there's been a dispute between Ebenezer Dark and my father. But she never said who her father was. So later on, you met who her dad was, and he had this whole elaborate thing. Yeah.
Dennis O'Neil created Ra's al Ghul?
Yep.
Yeah.
Along with Neil Adams.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So they actually started off as allies. A lot of people think like, okay, well, they be great villains, but it wasn't actually until the third Ra's al Ghul story that they were at odds.
Cool. That's cool.
So
that actually gives some credence to the beginning.
A little bit.
They weren't quite friends, but they weren't enemies.
It wasn't so antagonistic. Like, Batman's pissed that it was a trap or whatever, or it was all a test at the end of the day. But Robin was never harmed. He doesn't really have a reason. So the next time Ra's al Ghul showed up in a story called Swamp Sinister, he was asking for Batman's help. And it was genuine help. It wasn't just like, I'm trying to con you to do another test. He was actually needed Batman's help for something. And then it wasn't until the issue called Vengeance for a Dead Man where Ra's al Ghul took out a man's brain and used his knowledge.
Some Hannibal shit.
Yeah.
He learned his
tried
knowledge
to use his
from
knowledge
his own brain
to help destroy the world. That Batman is like, you're a madman. Jesus Christ, I'm not going to help you. And finding out that he actually wanted to destroy the world and everything.
Wait, so Ra's al Ghul, League of Assassins existed for a while, and then Lazarus Pit?
League of Assassins existed first, then Ra's al Ghul.
Then Lazarus
Then
Pit.
the Lazarus Pit.
Gotcha. Okay.
Well, okay, League of Assassins, then Talia, then Ra's al Ghul.
Copy,
then
yeah,
Lazarus
yeah.
Pit. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So there is precedent to Ra's starting out as an ally to Bruce before they become enemies. Also, there's the pronunciation.
Yeah.
Bruce is a likable guy.
Yeah. There's a pronunciation. So beforehand, the only adaptation of Ra's al Ghul was in the animated series where they called him Raysh al Ghul.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Dennis O'Neil claimed that that was because somebody who either worked on the show or somebody who knew had studied Arabic and said that was the correct pronunciation. Then someone else came along who also claimed to speak Arabic and said the correct pronunciation was Ra's al Ghul. So now it's
like,
either one. Yeah.
What are we? What does he say?
Yeah, what I read was
Get out of
that
my office.
the creator, Dennis O'Neil and
Neil Adams, yeah.
they had Raysh in mind, but the thing is, in Arabic, it is Raz, is what I
got
read.
it. Yeah. I've heard it
So-
closer to like Rots.
Yeah.
Rots,
Rots al Ghul.
it's a big mess. Like,
It rubbed me the wrong way the first time because I was so familiar with the animated
Yeah.
series, but
it wasn't Raysh.
I was okay after that. I was like, I could ride with this.
They did an interesting thing in Arrow where if you are an outsider, you pronounce it Ra's al Ghul, but if you're initially in the League of Assassins, you call him Raysh al Ghul.
yeah, that's true. They
Hey,
made
Raysh.
they
High
made
five.
that difference.
They made the
yeah,
perfect
yeah,
split
yeah.
there, so that was cool.
Yeah, those writers they're good. They know their stuff.
They know,
you know what I'm
the,
saying?
the Easter eggs. Let's
Yeah.
see. The League of Shadows, of course, was not called that. I think the reason why they changed it was because they thought Bruce would seem like more of an idiot if he's like, I'm going to join the League of Assassins. Wait, you kill people?
Oh yeah, it's true.
So they changed it
the
to
League of Not Batman.
the League of People Who Don't Kill. So the criminal organization started off in 1968. That's Raws came out in the 70s or so. So they came out well beforehand, and it was kind of retroactively Ra's al Ghul's organization. It was originally headed by a man named the Sensei, who's also another bald Asian man with white hair. So you could also say that Ken Watanabe is the Sensei in this.
That's true.
But originally his organization was called the Brotherhood of the Demon.
That's
Great.
badass.
That's
Which is a
metal as
great
fuck.
name too.
Yeah.
Which honestly could have worked too if you wanted to avoid the League of Assassins
But
and just call the Brotherhood of
is
the Demon.
Batman Bruce Wayne gonna be like joining Brother of the Demon? Nothing wrong about this at all.
Bruce has joined a cult.
At least it doesn't say assassins. Well, I mean, look at the name of Ra's al Ghul. It's the head of the demon in
That's true.
English. So
That's just like their thing. It's just like whatever.
It's their culture, okay?
We generally just sit around talking philosophy. Right?
Yeah.
So,
let's see. All these things, by the way, are more superficial. I don't think we really need to do a competition in this because obviously it doesn't make sense to pit Ra's al Ghul meeting Bruce before Batman versus Ra's al Ghul meeting Batman
Just-
while Robin's in college because
they
that
were
wouldn't make sense for this
destined to meet, and we're
Yeah.
happy for both of them.
movie. Yes. See. Also, the hideout. So this is
Yes.
another common misconception. What is the name of Ra's al Ghul's hideout?
It's the Lazarus Dome, of
Run
course.
around the Lazarus.
A lot of people think it's
pit.
Nanda Parbat,
Oh, Nanda Parbat, of course.
except
Parbat.
it's not. In the original appearance, his hideout in the Himalayas was called Nanda Devi. Nanda Parbat was a completely separate location in the
Okay.
Dead Man comics.
Oh,
Does that mean
yes.
House of
That's
the
like his
Devil?
other realm or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it wasn't. And at some point, Grant Morrison had them going to Nanda Parbat in order to help resurrect Ra's al Ghul, but it wasn't really associated with Ra's al Ghul. It was just a common misconception that was his hideout.
Oh, okay.
And then
Grant Morrison must know all that, though.
He
He
must
was
have
just
thought it
fucking with
sounded
people.
snappier or something.
yeah, well, he
has
didn't,
bat in
he
the
didn't
name.
establish it as a hideout. He was just like, look, like this is where he would go to get his soul back because he sees it as
Oh, so the Lazarus Pit could be connected to that Nanda Parbat dimension.
yeah.
Maybe.
So it's
weaving a tale.
yes.
Yes.
33 and a third.
So I'd like to think
Liam
in the
Neeson
movie,
as the bat. Anyway.
I'd like to think in the movie it's Nanda Devi that we're at, but in Arrow for whatever reason they called the hideout Nanda Parbat, but it's not
Idiots.
supposed to be Nanda Parbat. Fools.
Let's
See, when he's not Batman, Bruce returns to Gotham, we go to a courtroom scene
How did he get there? Oh wait, that's another movie.
That's the different movie.
Oh yeah.
Alfred picks him up in this one. We go to courtroom scene. We've covered all the training stuff I think that we need to, but we go to courtroom scene, and this is what's sort of overlooked in the movie. This is the first adaptation of Mr. Zsasz.
Okay.
Mr. Zsasz is the defendant who Professor Crane or Dr. Crane in this is sort of saying like, hey, he's insane, and he's helping out with the fact that Zsasz works for Falcone in the movie and is trying to get him the insanity plea so he gets around in Arkham Asylum. You can tell it's Mr. Zsasz because he's called that, and also because they gave him the actor scars on his neck, which it's a very small Easter egg and not something you'd think that Nolan would put in because you'd associate that more with like the MCU type of stuff.
Yeah,
too.
Nolan doesn't like Easter eggs.
Yeah.
He would just,
But I think it made sense for what it was. I mean,
as long as it makes sense, he'll do it, but he won't do it just for the fuck of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like, let's put in a minor Batman villain in it. So Mr. Zsasz does
Nolan
have
does not
small-
believe in adding deleted scenes to any of his special features.
or post-credit scenes.
Yeah, well, he hates that, yeah.
Apparently, he said in Man of Steel, a real movie wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Nice.
He's throwing major shade
shots
at,
fired.
I get
at
behind
Marvel.
all that.
Apparently, he denied it later, but of course, what do you expect?
And especially with Heath Ledger dying. He already had the policy anyway, but when Heath Ledger died, it was like especially like there's no extra scenes of the Joker. You know?
Yeah,
people want to see that.
There's some
obviously.
small stuff, but it's like it's small. It's not like
Yeah.
there's
He's got to
a
have
huge
so much
thing.
more
Yeah.
than
Takes
that.
or
You know.
something.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like it doesn't add anything else to the story.
Yeah.
There's like another take of him like
Yeah.
in the bus when the bus goes off.
Oh, really?
But like that's it. Yeah, it doesn't add anything to it. This was also the beginning of Mr. Zsasz being bald. Beforehand, he had this short cropped blonde hair, and then the actor in the movie is bald, and then suddenly Mr. Zsasz was bald in the
From
comics.
that point
and
further,
then
the
from
Arkham game.
It just works that way, right?
Yeah, so that's how
For
it
some
happened.
reason.
They're creepy.
Next is I Shall Become a Bat.
That's my favorite. I need that in the movie. Matt Reeves, hear me
He never
out.
actually says it, but in the
He
comic,
just thinks it.
in the original comic, a bat flew into the window while Bruce was thinking about being what type of disguise he would take on. Obviously, as we covered in our Shadow episode, that was actually taken from The Bat.
I shall
Black
become a
Bat.
shadow.
Dawson Clade alias. Look that shit up. But anyway, in the update by Frank Miller in the Batman Year 1, Bruce Wayne goes out, gets wounded, then comes back and figures that he is going to die, but he doesn't want to die without having some sort of answer and calls upon the spirit of his father to give him an answer, and the bat crashes through the window.
And he's like, "You idiot!"
and Bruce decides to ring the bell so that Alfred can save his life. In the movie, it's very different, of course. Bruce recognizes after training with the League of Shadows that he needs a symbol to fight against Gotham's corruption, and is kind of inspired by Razz's teachings to find something elemental, something terrifying. And despite the fact that he has had a lifelong fear of bats and also saw bats in a hallucination at Nanda Devi, he still doesn't know what disguise to take on until he goes back home and he sees a bat.
I'm gonna dress up like a Frenchman.
Yeah.
There's one thing I want to pick. This is not even that tangential, I guess.
Yeah.
But in the end of the Batman Begins, he's wearing the fucking bat suit. It's assumed that he's kind of over his fear, but then bats fly by him when he's walking the street and one thing, and he gets a little afraid or something.
Wait, when's this?
This is like near the zombie part, like just before it, I think.
Wait.
The gas is about to leak.
Oh.
Or something.
I don't remember this.
Oh my god! And I when I watched with my dad was like, I thought he wasn't afraid anymore. You know what I mean?
Maybe it's just Christian Bale flinched, and they're
Yeah.
like, "We can't get another take. Let's keep going. Let's keep going."
Yeah, it wasn't. I don't know. It just could have been better, maybe. But maybe
No, all
I'm not
the-
remembering that correctly.
All the bats are CG, and he doesn't really get swarmed by them after this scene where he goes into the Batcave.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I'm. Anyway, keep.
I don't know
keep
what you're
going,
talking
keep
about.
Going. I don't know.
You do see the swarm of bats at Arkham.
Maybe that's it.
But
Maybe
he doesn't. He calls on them. Like he just walks through.
Is
them.
that when he says
They're
back up?
kindred. It's
Yeah, back up.
When he says back up, he's not afraid. But there's another scene I think, but I could be wrong.
Then he's
Anyway, I can't think of it. Yeah, it's
Oh
only.
wait, I'm wearing a mask.
Yes.
It doesn't make any sense.
He catches himself in a mirror like, "Ah!"
Yeah.
Anyway, I like these foam bat
Yes.
guys.
I've had these since the release. I've had all these things that you guys see now here since the release of the movie, and now you're not going to get the batarang.
If
back.
you're an audio
Shoot.
podcast listener only, these are like little foamy batarang
in
symbol
bronze,
guys. In
which never
bronze.
made sense
I
to
still
me.
cut myself.
They're nice. Anyway, keep going, Ben.
So he goes down to the cave and faces his fear because his trauma of bats started when he was in that cave, and the whole cave fills with bats, and he decides to stand up and face that fear, which is kind of similar to a scene from the Tom Mankiewicz draft in our deep dive in the Batman script from 1982. But there's given a new context in this, where it's like, I think you described it in our deep dive for that as a baptism. Almost.
So that's
a baptism.
A baptism.
Yes. It does kind of feel like that, because the point of again, I'm not really religious, but I grew up in that environment. Point of a baptism is to be born anew, be born again, to arise as a different person. And so he gets kind of like, it is kind of like a baptism of bats in a way.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Arises a new man.
Encapsulated, or what's a good word? He's surrounded by.
Engulfed or
engulfed in,
pretty much,
submerged. A word like that.
Yeah, his little bat wings. He says,
give it to me.
Do you feel like that's a fair
guano?
No, I'd say so, because of the fact that he's spent this entire life being afraid of it. And there's a tie-in between the trauma of bats with the deaths of his parents that wasn't really in the comics, but is so seamlessly blended together in this movie. I have to overlook the fact that he's had this lifelong fear, and he doesn't really think about it until later on to the scene. But still, like, it still works. It still works cinematically. So
it's cool.
Again,
I like it,
the difference is then bat flying through the window and him saying, "Yes, Father, I shall become a bat," or the bat swarming around him in the cave in Batman Begins.
There's some visual poetry with the swarm of bats.
I agree.
That I really like.
Baptism, of course.
The baptism.
Baptism. I agree. The movie has a great visual of that scene. So once again, to the movie. Let's see. Wayne Enterprises. So, let's see. Brought to you by Wayne Enterprises over here. The Lucius Fox character is a big... Lucius Fox is a big character in this movie. In the comics, he was just a businessman. He wasn't actually an inventor. And he helped take over as CEO around the 70s or so because of the fact that it didn't make sense to the comic writers that Bruce Wayne would be able to run a whole damn company successfully and be Batman and investigate the Joker. It just seemed more realistic to have the character in this. Obviously, Lucius Fox has a much different role in this as a Q-type character. So in the comics, Bruce first meets Lucius Fox in the Wayne Enterprises Science Division, and Lucius gives him a tour of all these shut down military projects. And Bruce is like, all right, thanks for the tour, and he leaves because surely this guy isn't just going to give it to him. So he shows back up again in disguise with Alfred as a delivery man to go sneak into the warehouse with this truck, and then they use the truck to sneak the projects out of it and into the Batcave. And given the fact that Bruce is back, he can easily sweep all that under the rug, and nobody will ask any questions on that. And so the lost prototypes sort of become his secret weapons to go on crime. Meanwhile, in the movie, Bruce meets Lucius Fox for about 5 minutes, and then Lucius Fox is just like,
my guy.
Yep, as far as I'm concerned, it's all yours. It's all yours, man, Mr. Wayne.
I really love James Bond.
Yes.
Have you ever seen those movies, Mr. Wayne? I want to be that guy.
This is also where the Tumblr comes in, where the Batmobile, I'll go a little bit more into the Batmobile later, but the Batmobile also comes from Wayne Enterprises, but in this one it was a tank prototype, and mainly Bruce spray paints it black in this one. Right. And the main contribution he does for his own, in terms of his own inventions, is he orders those cows and he sort of creates the bat ears to go up against it. But most of his stuff is given to him by Lucius Fox.
Right.
So significance of these changes, the fact that you have the idea in the comics of Bruce Wayne trying to retain his secret identity and go, sort of around different spots and different corners in order to cheat the system.
Accounting.
Yeah, creative accounting, and get these things to the Batcave without other people asking. Whereas in the movie, he gets the trust of Lucius Fox for about 5 minutes and gets given it to him, as we covered in the year one
previous Superhouse interviewee. Rob Freitas had a very big issue with this.
Yes.
Huge Batman fan himself. He said he didn't like Daddy getting the toys for Batman. Like, basically, or, Wayne getting the toys from
Bruce
Wayne Enterprises.
Historically capable of doing it on his own.
He makes it himself.
Well, there is a precedent. I can go on this a little bit. But there is a precedent for Batman getting his stuff from other people, though. In the comics, maybe not Lucius Fox, but the Golden Age Batman's costume was made by a tailor in Secret Origins Volume 2, number 6. Actually,
pretty
and then
kinky
another
stuff,
one, yes,
Mr.
yes.
Wayne.
Where he went in disguise and asked a bunch of tailors to create it for him. And then he was like, he had this beard and everything, so he looked like an old man. Paid the tailors off to make it, and then he had his bat suit. There's another version where
can't just buy a sewing machine.
Don't know how to sew. Alfred's like, I'm not doing
I tried
this.
the first costume,
honestly,
but it didn't turn out very good.
I don't mind him like getting it from Lucius really all that much because
it's the James Bond.
He's learning how to fight. He's learning all these fucking other skills. I mean, do I really need my Batman to know the ins and outs of soldering, hardware and dealing with the coding of all the electronic shit and all that too? Like,
yes,
you want to know all? Like, okay,
no. It's not necessarily that. To me, it's more of like the believability of Lucius Fox meeting the heir to the Wayne fortune for the very first time and being like, yeah, sure, take it home.
That's true.
That's to me the bigger difference.
Maybe there should have been a stronger scene with him and his father. I don't know.
Well,
that's not really
like
great.
He's never met Lucius before. It would have made more sense if he and Lucius went way back, but it doesn't seem like there's much history there. Like he doesn't even know that Lucius knew his father.
And for sake of believability and sake of time, it makes a lot of sense. And then you just have this like Brainiac because the character's old enough. He all does have some experience in like crafting all this shit.
Personally, I go with the comics on this one because he seems smarter in going around it, and Lucius Fox seems a little smarter and doesn't just give it to him. So that's my vote. I don't know what you guys think.
I'd say it'd be interesting to see in this new take of the Batman, see Robert Pattinson kind of wrapping his brain around some of this stuff.
I mean, that was some of our favorite stuff with the Aronofsky draft.
Yeah.
That's true.
It would just be kick-ass because like the Batman 89 alludes to a lot of that stuff, but he's already well established, and we're going with the younger one. It'd be cool that we haven't seen it, but within the Dark Knight trilogy, it didn't bother me so much. I thought it was like I would go with the comics on this one actually because it's just something we haven't seen.
Yeah, I kind of agree too. I mean, at the time when I watched the movies, it didn't bother me all that much. But now looking back on it, I kind of agree with Rob Freitas and everybody. I understand Nolan's
like
a huge.
Did the Batarang all on his own.
That's true. Nolan did not like, or Nolan really loves Bond.
Yeah,
so it's like,
the Q
okay,
character, the support.
He's British, Bell's British. I mean, I get it. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's fine.
True.
The next take will be really interesting because of that.
I think so too.
That we have so far.
Yeah. So goes to the comics again. We, as I said before, we do have a precedent for Batman getting some of his stuff from other people. So he got the Batarang from an Australian man named Lee Collins, which we covered in our training.
Watch, I'll do it again. Wow.
It's amazing.
Can they fit in your pocket? Well, not this one, but physics is physics. Yeah.
Come right back.
Physics is physics.
The Batmobiles at one point were said to have been made by a stuntman named Jack Edison in the Untold Legend of the Batman. However, in all of these versions, they know Batman as Batman, or Bruce was in some sort of disguise in order to ask them. It was never Bruce Wayne himself. Let's see. And then the Batboat was given to him as a gift from Scotland Yard.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Batman.
The Batboat's from where?
The Batboat is from Scotland Yard.
Scotland Yard?
Scotland Yard, yes. Scotland Yard gave him the Batboat.
The finest Batboats ever created by Her Majesty herself.
Because this was around the time where Batman was like a superhero in like the 40s and 50s, where he was like a world-renowned superhero. So they're just like, here's a gift.
Yeah.
Here's a gift.
We can trace this shit
got a
very
cup
easily.
holder for your tea.
Yes.
I don't drink tea.
And then, of course, one of the other gadgets that he gets is the cape, which is revealed to be memory cloth, which allows him to glide around. And the idea of him having a glider being specifically memory cloth is unique to the movie. However, in the comics, there are several points where he uses the cape to sort of glide along the sky.
That was like a kind of a new thing for Batman Begins, right?
Yeah.
They kind of split the difference on him like swinging around like Spider-Man and being more glidey.
They thought this would make more sense.
I like the glide.
I like the glide.
Yeah,
well, it makes him more bat-like.
Yeah.
I do
scary
like the classic like Batman the Animated Series where he's got the grappling gun and he's swinging through, and I'd like to see some of that too. But
definitely,
they
did a tiny bit of that with Affleck's in Justice League. They had a little bit more of him. Like I really enjoyed that.
Yeah,
I'm not a Batfleck hater. Anyway,
same here.
Yeah, none of us are.
Next is the origins of the Batcave. So they go in and they find out that Bruce and Alfred go down, and they find out that the Batcave has some historic relevance in the fact that the Waynes used it for the Underground Railroad.
Yeah. Was that new to the movie?
No, that was actually in the comics.
It is in the comics.
It's in Shadow of the Bat number 45, where Bruce researches his ancestors being involved in the Underground Railroad with his family helping to smuggle the slaves, and one of his ancestors actually dressing up in a black costume, of course, to fight slave owners in order to save.
Some Watchmen shit.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, that's cool.
So here's a less woke version of that from Detective Comics number 205, The Origin of the Batcave, where
written by Bob Kane,
probably Bill Finger, honestly. Bruce Wayne,
Bobby himself.
Bruce Wayne reveals that he bought the Wayne Manor and he planned to use a barn in the back as a hideout until he fell through and discovered the cave. So the idea of Batman falling into the cave has been there since day one.
What am I going to do with all this wood?
But later on, he went time traveling because they had a friend named Professor Nichols who allowed them to time travel. So they time traveled back, and they found out the cave was first used by a man named Jeremy Coe, who in the Old West times. And Jeremy Coe was his people were being attacked by Native American tribes, so he used the cave as his hideout as he dressed himself up as an Indian. I shit you not.
Oh, man.
To go undercover among the Native Americans. And there's literally scenes
and
where
they
he
totally
covers,
bought it.
and he covers his skin to color it red in the comic. So as I said, a much less woke version
Welcome to my scalp cave.
of the Batcave. Let's see. Other differences.
Scalp.
I'm not going to touch that one.
You said that one, man.
You said
that one's on you, man.
I have native lineage.
You could do it. Yeah. Let's see. Afterwards, we meet a little bit of the GCPD corruption. So there's some big differences in the portrayal of the GCPD here, as we've noted when we went through the Aronofsky script. That's a lot more true to the Frank Miller version. Detective Flass in the comics is clean-shaven. He's a big, strong, former Green Beret dude who's very intimidating and is able to take out most people, including Gordon, until Gordon comes back after him for a rematch. In the movie, he's fat and looks like Lieutenant Eckhart from the 89 movie. Apparently, one of the original choices for Flass was Joey Pants, Joe Pantoliano.
Pants?
Oh,
Joe
okay.
Pantoliano,
Yeah.
who had worked with him previously in Memento.
Why didn't I take the blue pill?
Right. Yeah.
But Pantoliano wanted the Gordon role instead.
Yeah, I could see it.
And Nolan was like, no. And
He's
then
never got that role.
They already got. They got.
he never
I
gave
know.
it.
He is like that in Bad Boys.
He's like the trashy version.
Well, I think Pantoliano
Be
said,
sexy. Be sexy. Don't be you. Be Mike.
Pantoliano said in the interview that he had already played a skeezy cop in Memento. He had already played all these skeezy characters. He wanted to play a heroic character, especially Commissioner Gordon.
He had worked with Nolan before.
And he worked with Nolan before. And he was like, come on, we worked together. And then Nolan never hired him again after this for whatever reason. So he lost out on that. But he was the original choice for Flass. But this is kind of a little more superficial. But since we need to get back into the competition, we have Flass being a big, strong Green Beret dude who, which makes it sort of impactful when Bruce or Batman scares the living daylights out of him later on.
Right.
Okay.
Versus Flass in the movie, who is fat and greasy and sort of dripping with corruption, and sort of this visual representation of corruption in the movie.
Yeah, it almost like lessens the impact of having the reference to Flass with having the way he's portrayed in the movie. I suppose he could have been any kind of greasy cop, but
Right.
that's kind of like a small Easter egg.
It's a small thing, but I figured I might as well point out the difference for us to continue this competition.
And if having it any other way, you're setting up a fight between him and Bruce or him and Batman in some way. The Green Beret version, I mean.
Right.
You know, which would be cool, but then how are you going to shoehorn that into this already?
Well, I mean, they already have that confrontation with the swear to me stuff.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
But no, like Green Beret skills behind that. Because even if they, if they did that and then had the scene exactly the same, you're like, well, what does it even matter that he's one way or the other?
True.
I guess.
True.
Like, I like the movie.
So what's your vote?
I like the movie better, I guess, yeah.
Movie.
Yeah.
Movie?
But for anybody who's like a fan of like Year One or something, you're like, well, why did they even name him Flass?
Yeah, that was my issue
Could have
with
been
it.
well, not Bullock, but
Could have been Bullock, who then turns good, because Bullock started out as corrupt in the comics.
That could have been kind of cool.
Yeah, and then he could have had a redemption arc, but like that's a lot to fit in already. You might as well save room for Flass to be the Green Beret who fights Gordon, and Gordon does the
but
whole
I like how
scene
you
from
put
year
it,
one.
the kind of like visual representation of all that.
Yeah, I think that's why
that's
that
cool.
guy got caught.
Yeah.
The other dude from Memento instead. Instead of getting Joe Pantoliano, they got the motel guy from Memento instead.
All right.
All right, so that one goes to the movie then.
Yep.
On that one. Next is recruiting Gordon. So in the comics, Gordon, specifically year one, he's put on the task force to hunt down Batman. Tries to set up several traps for him, as we covered in the Aronofsky version, until eventually he notices that Batman doesn't kill people. Eventually he notices that Batman's going after the same people, and he only hits on the people who Gordon would go after. Mm-hmm. And then all comes to a head when he helps save Gordon's kid. In the movie, Batman sort of crashes into, not literally, but goes into Gordon's office, terrorizes him a little bit, but tells him, like, here's how we're going to take down corruption. We're going to work together. And then they're buddies pretty much from there on.
In that regard, I'm going with the comic.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That's another kind of like, do it for time kind of decision.
Yeah, that was definitely done
like,
for time.
Get some stuff out. It's not really the meat of our Batman movie.
Right, yeah. It was definitely the one for the Aronofsky version, but this one, Gordon's not as big of a role. Yeah. You need him in there, and it makes sense that they did what they did for time, but also...
But if we're doing the serial kind of like dream television show or whatever,
right,
that would be some
you
really
would need to build it up
stuff.
Well,
to, like that turn of character being like, oh my god, I've been fighting against like my greatest ally or whatever.
Yeah. Well, as I've said in the Aronofsky deep dive, I was just like, Batman just randomly shows up to Gordon's house, and then Gary Oldman turns around and is like, "Oh, hi," and I'm like, "What?" There's no like freak out. Like the weird thing is for all the stuff they got right from Batman and Gordon, there's never really a time where Batman does the whole like appear out of the shadows and just freaks him out.
Right.
And if he does, Gordon is just cool with it, as opposed to in the comics where he's always just like, "Are you trying to give me a heart attack?"
Right. He's in sync with the Bat.
He's a little bit more in sync. Yeah. So that one goes for the comics then on that. Yep. And then we go into the first night out as Batman. So in the movie, Batman, of course, on his very first night out, goes to the docks and single-handedly takes down Falcone's men, as well as Falcone himself, and straps the guy to the searchlight with enough evidence to take down corruption. This is very different from the comics, and funny enough, neither Detective Comics number 27, the first Batman story, nor year one actually show Batman's first night crime fighting. Mm-hmm. It wasn't actually showed until a later comic by Bill Finger called Detective Comics 265, where he encounters this hood named Slugsy Kyle. Slugsy Kyle.
Is that Selina's brother?
Potential brother to Selina, except I think this guy came before it was revealed that Catwoman's name was Selina Kyle. Yeah. So he tracks down Kyle to an abandoned glass factory using the particles of his shoe, so against this Batman using detective work, and then ends up capturing him and throws him to the GCPD with a note saying, that it's time for the Batman to show up. So he only takes down one dude in the comic. And then later on in the storyline Shaman, which sort of takes place concurrently with year one, Dennis O'Neil had a version where Batman shows up to save Leslie Tompkins, the woman who comforted him when he was, grieving over the loss of his parents. Save her from all these hoods.
Martha in Batman v Superman.
Yes. No. Don't say that again. Don't say that name. And he would end up pretty much saving her in an alley. So very small time appearances compared to the Batman Begins version. So we have him starting out small in Shaman versus him in Begins actually just full out taking out Falcone's men and everything.
The build in the film is so strong with the League of Shadows and everything. It makes a lot of sense. It's very believable.
Agreed. Yeah.
I go with that one, I think.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, we're going for a movie.
We don't have much conflict going on here.
Yeah. All right.
But it is true. It's just it's when it's good, you know what I'm saying?
So Batman has officially begun. When we get back, we will get to the rest of the movie. But so far, Wolfie, what is our score?
We are looking at I gotta count. 8-5. Movies winning.
Movies
winning by 3.
Nolan,
but we got some more. We got a whole other half of this movie to go so far. So our first half has finished, wrapped up. Batman has officially begun. Movies is in the lead right now, but we'll see what happens with the second half, which you'll have to find out next week. So, I am Bedouin Ryder on Instagram.
I'm Thunderwolf Drew on Instagram and Twitter, and check out the Shasta Army on Patreon.com/Superhouse Podcast. Shout out to Kooky Noms, Alicia, and of course Shasta, Matt Herring. And that's it for now.
Yep.
$1 tier is the Shasta Army on Patreon. And search for Superhouse Pod or Superhouse Podcast on all social media, mainly Instagram.
Yes, Superhouse Pod is where you can find us and follow us and see a lot of the visual stuff we might not have been able to show you here.
And Facebook, which I do a lot of the links on that one. Yeah. And then Wolfie.
I just come to hang out. Little young Wolfie Crescentton. I'll get more in the mix here as days go on.
And little plug for the next episode.
Plug for the next episode, the second half of Batman Begins, comics versus the movie. Let's see who wins.
Superhouse 2020.
Yep.
Peace out.
Signing off.
Signing off.